And so it is. Welcome to the just kind of we're going to do a run through of the entire stack. So let's like recontextualize and remember which computers we're talking about, how they talk to each other, that kind of stuff. Screen share. All right. So over here, I have a client. For all the apps that we've done, so that's not entirely true. We talk about client. What are we talking about? Like 70% of the time.
User.
Oop.
Browser.
Browser. Learn about this a little bit more in Mod 3, but you've actually used Ruby as a client also. Technically speaking, client's something that asks for something, server something that gives something to you. But in context of our full stack app, client's the browser, and it makes a request to the server, which for us has been Rails. What kind of request does it make? What's the technology?
HTTP.
You got it. So we make an HTTP request, we get an HTTP response. Part of the HTTP protocol, that's that last P, is it has to be a round trip. If we send something, even if it gets there successfully, but we don't get a response, that's a failed request. All right, so client asks for something from a server. The server is going to probably ask for it from a database, gets it back, sends it back. One other part of this puzzle is how we got all these pages and stuff in the first place. So what's the other kind of server? We got two different kinds of servers here. Which one has like our HTML and our CSS and our JavaScript?
The database?
Nope, database is over here.
Oh.
There's two servers in this diagram. This one we'll call an API server. What's the other one?
Is it file server?
File server, very nice. File server is dead simple. That's why, like, so light server, that's just turning some folder in your computer into a file server. That's all it is. It's just Google Drive. It holds on to files. You can make an HTTP request to ask for a file, and you get the contents of it back. Cool. Questions about anything in this diagram so far?
So our file server is our HTML, our CSS. Is it our JavaScript?
Yes, it is. It's the contents of like your JavaScript. So if I have some JavaScript file somewhere, the browser needs those instructions to be able to do things like make its request to the API server. So store those in a file, we ask for the file, we get the contents back, and now it knows what program to run.
And the browser is the one doing the reading and executing and everything.
It's the most complicated piece of software on your computer. It's a miracle how it works.
So file server is just like the front end folder, right?
It's where the files that constitute our front end, that's like where they get stored. So we'll call all of this the front end. And we'll call all of this back end. Databases are on the back end. File servers are generally part of the front end.
So for the request, is it normal to just do all these to start out with like without encryption, or is that something we'll get into, like with the S at the very end of it?
Yes. In fact, like it's getting harder to find a browser that will let you make an unencrypted request now.
Okay.
Yeah, when I say HTTP, you can mentally sub that out for HTTPS.
Gotcha.
We are not in this program going to talk about how HTTPS works, but if you're curious, if you go over to my knowledge wiki, which is just my GitHub, calc/knowledge, you'll get here, you go over to the wiki, and then over in development, man, it's just about everything I know about everything. And one of those is HTTPS. So this walks through the whole process of like what HTTPS, how it works under the hood. But all we need to know in this program is that HTTPS makes it so that I know what I'm sending, the person I'm sending to knows what it's sending, but nobody in between knows what I'm sending. Not my router, not my ISP, not the person who's spying on my network right now. Nobody can see what I'm sending. And that's standard at this point. Cool. What else?
Speaking of your GitHub, where would be? Where can we find the questions and answers that you have for the interviews?
Mm-hmm. That's in the mod 3 section. It's on the Firebase side, actually. If you want to look at those, go over to mod 3 and then discuss common programming topics. This talking code thing right here has all the questions and answers to just a bunch of really common programming things. What else? Questions about high-level concepts about how these pieces fit together. All right. I want to give you a series of steps, and let's see how far we can collectively get through these. So, step 1, make an index.html, app.css, app.js files. I want you to put valid HTML in your index.html page, linking everything together. So I have to have all of our required HTML elements, head, body, title, and then we also need to have the script, and we need to have the link to get the CSS in. Then I want you to create a hard-coded list of items in your HTML. You guys tell me, what's the list of items today?
What's the question again?
Well, give me a noun, some list of items. You guys want to do dogs again? Chinchillas? Cats?
We can go with dogs.
All right. Brooke wants dogs. We're doing dogs. So, okay, hard-coded list of dogs in your HTML. I want you to serve up your HTML. So you should see all of your dogs at that point. So we've just done, we've made some files. We're serving them up. You point your browser to where the server is. You ask for the file. You get back. Ta-da. That's step one. Step two, I want you to make an array of dogs. I want you to turn that array of dogs into HTML elements. Or, hey, we're grown-ups now. We can use the real word, right? DOM elements. So you're going to turn those into dog elements, and then you're going to add each of them to the page, and then delete your hard-coded dogs. So basically, you should end up with the exact same result at the end of this. The only thing that's different is we're doing it with JavaScript instead of hard coding it. But do the hard coding step first. We hard code it. We'll make it dynamic with JavaScript. Next, I want you to scaffold. Let's see. I just said make. Well, you got to be pretentious and use big fucking words, Kyle. Make a new Rails API. I want you to add a dogs index route. I want you to create a dogs controller, create an index action on the dogs controller. I want you to create a dog model. I want you to return, let's do some seeds too. Create new dog seeds. Return all of your dogs from the index action as JSON. There's step 3. Last step, I want you to create, let's see, in your app.js, fetch the list of dogs from your API. Oh, speaking of which, we should probably serve it up. Run your Rails server. Fetch the list of dogs in your API. Move your DOM element creation and appending logic to your fetch callback, and then use the response from your API instead of your array. Cool, and that takes us all the way through a full stack app. We've done all of these things. What questions do you have about how they fit together? Cool. So what I want you to do is we're going to do these first 4 little mini steps here. Don't need to do a whole thing yet. Just these first couple. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to put that together. 4 minutes. Go. So you're done with this when you can hit a URL in your browser and see a list of dogs. All right, pencils down. Please Slack me the contents of your index.html file. Let's see where we're at. Not bad, not bad. All right, so let's walk through it. All right, so nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. First instruction is make an index app in app file. I'm going to touch index.html, app.js, app.css. All right, so I got 3 empty files in here. I'm going to go into this index.html file, and I'm going to add the doc type. For step 1. Thank you, Gerald. Looking great. All right. I'm going to make the HTML. HTML has a head and a body. Our 2 other required, not optional, pieces are a title and a character set. When we're not in mod 2, ask me what character sets are someday. It's kind of an interesting answer. All right, so these are our absolutely required elements. I would also, let's see, and we also want to link everything together. So I can get the JavaScript in here. Like so. But if I just do this, then the DOM is not going to be loaded by the time I need to be fucking around with the DOM. So I defer. You can also put it at the bottom of the body. Either way is common. We're also going to add a link for a style sheet. Links have hrefs, not srcs. Easy thing to get mixed up. All right. So we have everything linked together. Now we can put pretty much whatever we want in here. Now, first thing that I noticed is I saw some people using some semantic elements. Well done. Let's say I wanted to do that. So like maybe I wrap this in a header. And then I have like a main or something down here. That's cool. That works. However, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot just put LIs like willy-nilly in the middle of nowhere. So if I have Bixby, Harmony, and Mesa here, this is not valid HTML. List items need to be wrapped in a list element. There's 2 options. We can do a UL, or what's the other one?
OL.
OL, an unordered list or an ordered list. Either one could be used here. However, semantically, an unordered list is one where the order is not significant. An ordered list is one where the order is significant. So, like if these were rankings, that's an ordered list because the order matters. If these were like by date of acquisition or something like that, order matters. If it's just, these are the dogs that I have. If it doesn't break the meaning of the app, if I do that, then it's an unordered list. Questions about any of this so far? Cool. So our last step on here was to serve up the HTML. So in this folder, I'll do this. Let's see, file server. So if I run light server in here, all this does is take the folder that I'm in and turn it into this file server here. So when I type in my browser, localhost 3001, it goes, you didn't specify the file you wanted. I'm assuming you want an index.html. That's the default if you don't specify a file. But I could just as easily do something like /app.js, and I get my empty app.js file. If you don't specify something, it assumes you want a file called index.html. And there's my buds.
Kyle, what is the difference between 3000 versus 3001?
It's one more.
Noted.
So they're not significant. Like, for example, we can specify a different one. Server help. Nope. Shut up. Light server. Nope. Light server port 4000. Shit. Light server won't let me do it. I think it needs to be a file or something with light server, which is kind of annoying. But ports are how we like run more than one app on our computer. Because if this is 3001 and we want to run Rails on 4000, like they can't be the same one. And you have thousands of these available on your computer. It honestly doesn't matter. HTTP server, which is an alternative to light server, defaults to 8080. There are some illegal ports. I think you're not allowed to do stuff in the 5000 series. There's some defaults on your computer. So like 22 by default is when you're logging into another computer remotely, it uses port 22. But if you use anything that starts with 3, you're probably in good shape. Real external, like if I wanted my computer to be an HTTP server for real, by default, it would run on port 80.
I just noticed that my default has been 3000 and all the instructors' defaults seems to be 3001. So I wasn't sure if there was something I was missing or if it's just happening.
I'm just also running another server somewhere, almost definitely. So like if what other TMUX sessions am I running? Just that one? So I'll bet if I kill all light dash server, if I kill all Puma, I kill all Rails. All right, I wonder if it'll do the same thing now.
Taylor Kyle.
No, it's not 3000. Oh, it's because here it is. It's this Prop Driller 9000 thing that I was doing earlier. That was running on 3000. And so if light server sees you're already doing one, it just goes for the next number. Oh man, I actually killed my server. Other questions so far? Now I'm on 3000.
So essentially, if you have like another project open and we're running the server for it, it's gonna go at 1.
Yep.
Okay.
This is what it does. So
Okay.
local, like for example, localhost and Rails both default to 3000. Whichever one you do first will probably be 3000. Whichever one you do second will probably be 3001. But they're not otherwise significant. Other questions? Onward. So the next thing that we want to do, we're going to go into that JS file. We should probably sanity check ourselves that that JS file actually works. So if I go into app.js, I do something like an alert. Cool. Means my JS file is wired correctly. And I want to do these steps. Make an array of like dog objects, transform those into DOM elements, add them to the page, and then use those instead of my hard-coded dogs. So if you need to catch up, here's the code that I have. I'm going to add this as a comment on my Zoom announcement. So if you want to use my code, you may. Elsewise, let's do another 4 minutes and see if you can get these next 4 steps done. Go. Hey, gang. All right, slack me what you got. Pencils down. Just the FJS file. Seeing a lot of answers and none of them are right. So let's walk through this together. Cool. First thing, trying to make an array of dogs. So first thing I noticed, this is real hard when you're bouncing back and forth from JavaScript to Ruby. So things like linters are very good at helping you remember this. Gotta have a scope modifier on this. Can't just do dogs equals. All of our variables need to have constant let in front of them. Okay, another thing. This is called an array literal. This is what we want to use basically always. You could also do something like that. Basically, never do that. Use the literal. These do the exact same thing, asterisks, but always use the literal syntax instead. All right, next. So we want to have these dogs in here, and we'll give them some property. It could just be strings or something. But let's do an array of objects. So we could do something like that, and that's fine. The problem is that, like, as soon as we have to add any other characteristic to the dog, the whole thing falls apart. We have to change the data type, and changing data types is a big deal. So instead, we make these arrays of objects, like that. Like that. We want something kind of like this. Questions so far? Cool. So there's our array of dogs. Turn that array of dogs into dog elements. I want this burned into your brain because we're doing this from now to like mod 5. Turn into, what What should immediately pop in your head?
Map.
Map. If you're transforming something, turn into, anything like that, that's a map. I'm taking an array of objects and I want to turn it into an array of elements. Saw a couple of you using for loops for this. Don't use for loops. You should know how to use for loops, and you might use them in like computer science questions. Like it'll come up in interviews. In practice, though, use an enumerable if you have a chance, and you always have a chance. So I want to take these dogs and map them. So I could call that $sign dogs, I could call it dog elements, I can call it whatever. Let's say dogs.map, and then the thing that gets passed into map is what?
Singular. Name.
A what?
Name.
Not name.
A callback function?
Yes, it's a function, and you'll hear people call this a callback function often. It's technically not what it is. It is more properly called an applicative, but not important. The important thing to know is that it's a function. And then what's going to get passed into this function? Remember, this works just like blocks did in Ruby.
Dog.
Dog. Cool. And then the thing that gets returned is whatever the transformed thing is. So you can see this written a couple different ways. That exact same thing could also be written like that. So we need those. You don't even need the return keyword for that one. Works the same way. We can also write that as and then do something like this, and this are all the exact same thing. You'll see people use those syntaxes interchangeably. Questions? Probably the easiest one to get started with is this second one. We'll do it like that. So we want to turn a dog into a DOM element. So what do we need to do in here?
Create the element.
Yep. So what's the element?
Li? Or, yeah.
Cool. So we make an li. What do we do to that li?
We would want to add it to our list, but we don't have a list.
No, that's a different step. Adding each one onto the page is step 3. Step 2, we just have to turn them into elements first. We're not transforming and adding. We're just transforming right now.
Manipulate?
What was that, Ben?
Manipulate it?
Maybe. How could I manipulate it? Somebody else.
Change the inner HTML to the dog's name.
Yep. Although, a word of caution, if all we're doing is adding a, like setting the text value of something, don't use inner HTML. Use text content. So what do we want to set the text content to?
Dot name.
Yeah. Oh, Haley. So this will do the exact same thing. It's not semantically correct, though. What this is for is doing something like this. So every once in a while, we need to like, it's not just making an LI, it's making an LI that has a div in it that has a paragraph tag and H2 and like a bunch of other shit. Way, way easier to do that with inner HTML than just creating all of those elements and appending them to each other. Like, that sucks. So inner HTML saves us that. If we're just setting the text of something, text content is more correct.
Cool, that takes interpolation too.
Yeah, dude.
Didn't know.
So yeah, and like that interpolation we can go kind of wild with. We could say something like, I can put just an arbitrary amount of HTML in there, and then the browser is going to render all of that as a child of the LI. That's awesome. So, and I think that also comes up on the code challenge too. Like, you don't fail or anything if you create separate elements for all that and append them to each other. It's just slow, hard to read. If it's just a string though, text content. Cool. What else do I need to do? This is the easy one to forget, especially if we're jumping back and forth between JavaScript and Ruby a lot.
Return $li.
Hey, there we go. Nice. So now we have a list of transformed dogs. Let's prove it. My console log dogs and $dogs. And look at my console. Hey, there's an array of objects. Hey, there's an array of elements. Questions about that?
Remind me again, the $ syntax is mostly for your benefit, correct?
Correct. It does not do anything special. It's just a character. But especially for things like this, I think it's handy to distinguish between an array of objects and an array of elements. I use the $ to do that. Lots of like devs from my very specific generation do also. It's not that common, but I think it's really helpful, so I'm showing it to you.
I was expecting the create, manipulate, append formula, but I feel like I'm only seeing the first two.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Or
you're correct.
Okay.
We have created, we have manipulated, and now we need to actually add them to the page. Okay. They're not there right now.
Got it.
So, yeah, when I look in the browser, these are still my hard-coded dogs. Here, I can prove it. I put exclamation points after them or something. No exclamation points on the page. If I want to add these to the page, what do I do? Ooh, yes, we append. Be more specific. Because I saw a lot of appends on those codes you sent me. I didn't see a right one yet.
Do we append the li to the ul?
Yes. So how do we get the UL?
You create one.
Ooh, so a couple ways I can do that. I know that I'm going to get rid of these hard-coded dogs. So like in step 4 is that. But do I also get rid of the UL? Why would or wouldn't I do that?
You might want to make more lists.
Yeah. Like, and if I target just ULs, that's any UL. And so if I have more ULs on the page, it doesn't work too good.
So would you select main and also query select main and UL?
I could also do something like add a class to this. Everybody follow along with me on this one. Just on the UL, give it a class of dogs. So now I can target that and say, hey, this list of dogs I have, I'd like to add some dogs to it. And then it becomes a pretty straightforward thing. In general, here's the big concept. I'm going to expect something like that. I want my containers to still be part of the actual HTML. They might not have anything in them. That's fine. But I don't want to have to also add the containers. That's inconvenient. Because then I got to like do something like target main, and I got to add it to main. Okay, well, append puts it at the very end. Okay, I don't want to put it at the very end. Okay, well, you can put it at the beginning with prepend. Okay, well, what if I want it in the middle? So that's why it's useful to scaffold out these things ahead of time. Okay, so I want to get this list of dogs in JS. How do I do that?
Query select by
Document.query selector. And then what am I selecting it by?
dogs.
Dogs. Dogs. Exact same way we would do this in CSS. Use the exact same selector system. So that could be something like that. That could be that. Could be that. That could be ul.dogs. That could be that. Anything that's a valid CSS selector. And when we do query selector, we get the first one. Whichever the first match it finds, we just get that back. We wanted everything. That gives us back an array of every match it could find. Okay, I have the UL. Here's something that I saw a lot in the code you guys sent me. I saw a lot of wah, 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 wah. That doesn't work. Why?
Is it because you're appending all three in like a package as like one element essentially, right?
Kinda.
Like one entire object instead of each separate?
Yes. Like that's fundamentally why. Let's think about this in terms of data types though. What data type is $dogs?
It's
an array.
Right.
Array. And like, we don't even need to know anything about this problem to know that. Map always returns an array. So it's an array. What do you think append is looking for data type wise?
An element.
An element. An array is not an element, even if it's an array of elements. this is a thing that's true throughout programming. Think about the data types, like a lot. That is, when you're troubleshooting something, like thinking about what the types are will do you very well. All right, so if append is looking for types, how do I get around this?
So is this where the for in you can use?
Ooh, so yeah, we could do that. We could say something like for dog in dogs. And if we did something like that, that would work, pretty sure. Let's see. Should I like, what's this?
See IDs.
Not the IDs, close.
X.
The indexes, indices. Two ways I could get around that. Anybody know what they are?
I did for each. I don't know if that's right.
For each is right. But if we were going to do it with for in, how could I make them show up correctly?
Is it can you access the dot property, the dot name?
Well, that's already in there. We're past the dot name thing. We have the elements now. The object, that's some step one bullshit.
So can you do like dogs for each?
That's going to be our actual answer, but you should know how the actual for loop syntax works. So this dog, it's not actually the dog. It's like the dog index. So,
Oh, so you just do a square brackets and
yeah.
dogs.
So you probably do something like that. Hey, look, there's my exclamation point buddies. There's an even easier way than that that still uses for loops. Anybody know what it is? It's not for in.
Is it for of?
For of, we'll also do that. For in is keys, for of is values. The key of an index is its, or the key of an array is its index. But we don't want to do either of those. For each, oops, not that, dogs for each. And otherwise it works the same way as map, same syntax. And then what do we want to do for each dog?
Dogs and URL dot append.
Yep, you got it. Because dog is an element. We can append those. And let's take a look at what we got. Beautiful. My dogs are on the page. Step 4, delete my hard-coded dogs. Bye, buds. And there we go.
Can you go back to your code? Point?
Absolutely.
When would you use append versus append child?
Man, I pretty much always use append. It does the same thing, but it's more flexible. So append child will only allow you to add one element at a time. Append will also allow you to do that, but I could do comma separated. So note that I'm not passing in an array, I'm passing in more arguments. But you have that flexibility with append. Also, I think it reads better than append child.
Why didn't we want to just append each dogs in the same loop that we're creating them?
Ah, good question. Yeah, this feels super inefficient, right? Why do you think I wanted to break this up into 2 steps?
There was a term for this in the last thing. Like single functionality rules.
Probably single responsibility principle.
There you go. Yeah, that's it.
Technically an OOP idea, but similar kind of thing here. We want these steps to only do one thing if we can get away with it. Transforming it and adding it to the page are 2 different things. So I'll take the very small performance hit by looping through all this shit twice for better separation of concerns.
Can I see what your console looks like with this working?
The console?
Yeah, mine's working, but it has like a weird like syntax error, but I got my dogs to show up, so I just wanted to see what yours says. Didn't it have like the array pop up? Oh no.
Nope, I got rid of that console log. Here, why don't you share your screen?
Yeah, I am on 2 different computers, so I can't.
Okay.
My Mac just gets like way too hot. It just says uncaught syntax error. Identifier dogs has already been declared, but my list showed up after I deleted. So
you probably did something like that, is my guess. So be real careful about what. So if you const something, you can't make another variable with that same name. That's against the rules. This and this get around it with that $sign. All right, one more flash forward. This is like a flash forward probably later in your career. We'll talk about this a little bit in the functional programming part of Mod 2, or Mod 3, I mean. But another reason to break those up into separate steps, rather than just, you can just do that and call it a day, is the way that I would actually write this is probably something like, and then write separate functions for each of those. So now it's like my code is telling a story. That's a lot easier to debug. It's a lot easier to reuse these like separate functions. Don't worry too much about it right now, but that's why I would do that as 2 separate steps. We can also chain these. Check this shit out. So if I move that up there, all right. So on dogs, I do a dot map, and then I take the result of it, and I for each it. We can chain this stuff just like we did in Ruby. And do something like that. And now I don't even need this variable anymore. That's pro code.
Is that also why we're declaring the $UL constant, so we can change where we're appending these things?
Correct. Because I don't want to necessarily just throw it at the end of the body. That's sloppy. That's like, hey, can you put this thing away? And you just throw it across the room and hope it got in the drawer. I'm just gonna put this in the garage real quick. Pick where you want to put stuff.
I was more thinking like the way this is written, we could just avoid declaring like $UL and use document.querySelector in the for each loop, and then just
so yeah, let's say I did this like this instead. don't like that one as much. 2 reasons why, but I'm curious to see if anybody can pick up on it. One of them's a little bit sneaky.
It does 2 things.
It does, like, not necessarily in a bad way. It's more that like it's hard to read. But we could get around that easy enough. Like if I just did that, that gets around the readability problem and splits that into 2 steps. Still don't like this. It's because for every single dog in that array, I have to look up where that UL is every single time. That's inefficient.
So declaring that constant outside of the function basically like saves that, and then it can just reference it in one.
Bingo. That is exactly it. Use the same reference every time. Smart. More questions about this? Cool. So, just like last time, if you would like to use my code, same place. It's on the Zoom link thread. Now, we're going to make a single resource API in Rails. Right now, this is completely disconnected from everything we've done. I would put it in a totally separate folder too. So like for mine, there's the app right now. I would make a separate folder called backend that we'll put the Rails app in. So I could do Rails new API backend or something like that. Or if you're in the folder, it's just dot. But let's take a look at what we have to do here. We're going to make the new API, make sure that we've got a route, make sure we've got a controller, index action, dog model, seed some dogs, return them all back as JSON, and then we're going to run the server. So this one, you've done it correctly when you can hit 3001/dogs or 3005/dogs or whatever it is, and see back a list of dogs in JSON format. So this one takes a little bit longer. We'll call this 6 minutes. All the stuff we were doing at the beginning of last week. Go.
Kyle, when you're working on something like this, is this like your usual workflow? Kind of start front end and then work your way towards the back end, or personal preference, or?
So I think this is a very sane way to approach this because we got the app working in like minutes. That was this first part here. All we're doing throughout this entire thing is making it better. Versus, let's say we do this the exact opposite way and work back to front. Problem there is that we're crossing our fingers and hoping it like works at the end. Versus going this way, if something breaks, we know exactly where and why it broke because it worked 20 seconds ago. That's why this workflow is better.
So is that to say that this part is the like the MVP?
MVP is a different concept. Like I know that even other instructors here use that word differently. An MVP is code or is a feature that tests a hypothesis. This is like a workflow for building a feature, I would say.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Is there another question in there?
I was just going to say, is this like just a bunch of thin vertical slices?
I would say this entire thing is one thin vertical slice.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is a skeleton pretty much, right?
Yep. But like listing something, that's a thin vertical slice. You list a bunch of dogs. This is the dirt easiest way to do that. Just hard code it. And now all we need to do is make that more real, make that more dynamic. So same behavior, different implementation. All of this is refactoring. All right, pencils down. Let's see. Slack me your controller, your dog's controller. Go.
There's just the faintest moment of hesitation when I started writing Ruby.
Ah, beautiful. Perfect all the way across. I like it. So, call this Rails server. All right, Derek, I'm going to meet you. There you go. All right, so I'm going to make the folder. I already made the folder. So go to the back end, Rails new -- API. Make it right in this folder, please. So throws all the stuff in there for me. All right, we're up and running. So I'm going to go to my router, resources, dogs, solamente, index. Cool. Now let's make a, what was the next step? Made a route, need to make a dogs controller. We're going to generate a controller for dogs. So we're going to make an index action on that dogs controller. I usually don't do this with something like simple like this, but this is also like, you can zoom in on this exact process. If I did something like, well, what if the dogs are an array of hashes? or I just make them right here. So I say like Bixby is dog.create, whatever the fuck, and then put Bixby in here and then send it back. Get it working as quickly as possible. That means like no models, no whatever. Just trying to do it really simple. And then we just need to keep that working while making it more dynamic. So we could do that same process, but I'm going to say dogs is dog.all. I'm going to render JSON. I like wrapping these. You don't have to. It'll work just fine if you don't. But the reason that I like wrapping these is I could very conceivably want to have things at the top level of this response that aren't just the dogs. Like, I might also have a warning, like, you might want to have other things that you're sending back also. So I like labeling my response.
So that dogs, what looks like a key is a heading.
It
would be dogs and then a list of dogs.
Correct. Yeah, this is just a hash. I could also write this like that.
So what I'm saying is when it renders, rather than just my list of dog objects,
Right.
it's going to have the heading dogs.
Yep, then we'll have a little label on it. Cool. Controller built. Create a dog model. I know how to do that. Rails G model dog singular. Looking good so far. So now I need to make the migration for those. So they've got a name. Cool. And then I need to actually do the migration. Rails DB migrate. Step complete. I'm going to go over to seeds. A little grim, but I'm going to destroy all the dogs so I can keep running this seeds file as much as I want. And let's get some pals in there. Then we'll seed the database with these. Rails DB seed. So they're in there. Return back from the indexed actions JSON. We did that. Now we run our Rails server. Rails S. Yep. Address is in use, port 3000. So now I can do Rails S dash P 4000 or 3003 or whatever. Doesn't matter. All right, now it's on 4000. So if I go over here to localhost 4000 / dogs, there's my pals. Yeah, there's that top level key. And that's this step. What questions do you have about it?
How much more complex will this get in the future? Do we basically have it here, or like this is the skeleton, but you can add a bunch more stuff depending on what you want your API to be?
Stuff in the API that we haven't done, like a little bit with relationships, but that's just the has many belongs to. You guys know how to use include in the response. Ta-da, there's relationships. Done. At the beginning of mod 3, we'll talk about validations. So this is like, if you're going to create a dog, did you send me the right things? And then we have some stuff on serializers where like, instead of writing out this every time, Rails has a way to like automatically format your response pretty much however you want. There's a couple more things, but like, I would say you guys probably know the 80% of everything we're going to do with Rails in this program. Not a whole lot more to it.
Is this, if we were to use a different language to try to do what we're doing, is it a similar amount of work to create this?
Rails is the easiest, like widely recognized as the easiest. All the stuff we get for free with Rails, like you have to do by hand and Express, but it's just more typing. It's not more complicated. Oh shoot, one more thing that we do in Rails that is a little complicated. This is a mod 3 thing, is auth. Who was allowed to add a dog? How do we make sure that they are who they say they are? That kind of stuff. Other questions? So we got our front end working. We got our back end working. Now we just need to cross the chasm. So this one's quick, not a lot to it. We want to fetch from the API that we just made. We want to move all of our DOM creation stuff into the fetch callback, and that is a callback. And then we want to use the thing that we got back instead of our hard-coded array, like we are now. Cool. Let's take 3 minutes on this one. Go. All right, pencils down. Send me your new app.js file with the fetch stuff. Nice. So a few right answers. A couple of you pretty close. Let's see, there we go. All right, let's take a look at how we do this. So what I'm ultimately trying to do is instead of using this hard-coded array here, I just want to get it from the API instead. So what I'm going to do is fetch. I need to fetch to the correct place. So I put this at localhost 4000 DAOs. Pro tip, fetch will only work if you put the protocol on it. So like that doesn't work. Google.com doesn't work. Like you have to have the protocol on it. And when you're working with localhost, I mentioned that like HTTPS is pretty universal at this point. Localhost is the exception. HTTP, you have to use HTTP with localhost. But hopefully we don't worry too much about people spying on communications happening exclusively inside of our computers. Kind of an interesting reason why, but don't worry about it right now. All right, so we fetch from this API. Then we take the response and call the JSON method, come on, call the JSON method on it to parse it. Okay, this is, I saw this one a bunch of times. You are not turning it into JSON. You're not turning it into JSON. You're not turning it into JSON. It is JSON, and you're turning it into a JavaScript object. So it wouldn't make any sense to see something like that, because it's not JSON. JSON's the string. That's how we were sending it over the wire here. It has to be characters. HTTP doesn't know objects, doesn't know arrays. It just sends bytes. So, all right, so we get this JSON string back. So this method here is just telling us, hey, the thing that I got back is JSON, so treat it that way. But really, this is the response object. But we can just say response again. These two things aren't in the same scope, so we can reuse the variable. All right, so we take this response, and let's take a look at that. What am I getting back right now? Doggo puppers. Womp, 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 womp. Old man Coberly forgot a step in the Rails process. What did I forget?
Is it the course?
Cores. Gotta do that core stuff. So walk me through this. You're gonna like, I've been doing this a long ass time. Still made this mistake. You're going to make it too. So how do I fix that?
Go to config.
Say that again.
Go to config.
Config. So
Initializer.
yep. All right. What do I do in here?
Then uncomment out your Rails method.
Very nice. Now what?
And take out the example document and put a
In like a real app, this should be the actual name of your app. Like something like that. But this will do for right now. All right, so we'll allow all the origins in. One more step.
go to your gem file.
Yeah. Uncomment out that. Probably not the worst thing in the world to bundle install after that. You probably have it on your computer already, but workflow wise, that's a good way to do. And then start our server again. All right.
What was core's origin again?
Asterisks. All right, so now I look over here. Sick shit. I'm getting the stuff from my database back. Cool. So, back over in this file. So I've got that. This is another thing that people make mistakes with constantly. The response. This is that object that has a dog's key that has the array that I want. Really, what I want to work with is response.dogs. Like that. And that is effectively the same thing as like my hard-coded dogs up here. So that means the easiest way for me to move all of this DOM element creation stuff into the callback would be something like const dogs equals response.dogs. And then all the rest of this, put in there. Cool. And now, let's see, get rid of my, oh, it already worked. Let's see. They don't have exclamation points anymore. So that means, final step, I can get rid of my hard-coded ones. I made a full stack app. I can refactor this. The only place I'm using this dogs is there. I'll make that one response.dogs. Now I don't need that anymore. I can still put this UL outside of this if I want it. It'll still work. Pretty cool. Questions?
Can you drop that code as well?
Yeah. What else?
When you do your fetch calls, do you usually squeeze all the functions in there, or call them like you said, like separate? You call them out.
So that's a great question. what I'll do IRL. Just like with the maps, I try to, I'll usually write it exactly like this, and then I'll start looking for ways I can extract functions. So like this one right here, that's like a dog to element function. All right, so that takes in the dog and then does all of this. All right, so takes in a dog, returns an element. All right, well now I can make this dog to element. A little bit tighter. Same thing here. That's like a add to dogs thing that takes in a dog and does that. All right, well now this is add to dogs. All right, well if the only purpose of that variable is to use that right there, well I can jam those together like that. Now I don't even need that variable. For readability, I like splitting up each of the enumerables on different lines. All right, so now I'm in the exact same position here. I'm going to call that a function called like add dogs to page. And it's going to take in, oh shoot. We could do it this way. We can have it take in dogs like that. But then we need to call it because we have a response, but what we really want is response.dogs. So that might be something like add dogs to page, and then pass in response.dogs. Okay, that works. Since we're like in one-liner land now, we'll probably make that a little bit shorter. So it's like that. That's not too terribly bad. The next thing that I would want to do for pro code is get both of those into functions also. So like this response.json one would be something like parse JSON that takes in a response and then returns response.json. Now this becomes that. And then it's a little bit of redirection, but I could say something like dogs response to page that takes in a response like that, and then does that. And now this can be, come on. Ah! Oh, I see what I wasn't looking. Dogs response page. If I was writing this code in real life, it would probably look something like that when I was done. All of these things by themselves, super easy to test. That's a big reason to do it this way. Also really easy to debug. Not a single one of them that's longer than 3 lines long. Not a whole lot of places for an error to hide in that. And then the actual like work being done on the file reads like a story. That's especially if I say move that into a variable also. Call that like dogs URL. Fetch the dogs URL, then parse JSON, and then add dog's response to page. What comment could I add to that that would make it more clear than the function names and stuff already are? I don't write my code like this originally, but I try to leave it this way when I'm done. Does it still work? Still works. Questions?
Can you go back about 35 minutes to when my internet punched out on me?
Oh.
I've been recording this, so.
Yeah, no, I figured. Just one quick question. The local host 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
What's up with that 4,000?
So I was already using 3,000 for my file
Just
server.
yeah.
So yeah, that one's 3,000. So the Rails server can't also be 3,000. I could have made it 3,001. I could have made it 3,005. It doesn't actually matter.
Sure.
But when I started up my Rails app, that's the port that I put it on.
Okay.
What did you do to get rid of like the duplicate set of dogs?
I'm sorry, say that again, Haley?
What did you do to get rid of the duplicate set of dogs, like the list?
All right, so I had that when we were here. Check that the response is working. And then we just moved all of that into the body.
Did you like run Rails DB seed again? Or, because mine's showing like duplicate set of dogs and I got rid of the first like array of dogs. So it's just using what we created in our Rails app. But I still have my duplicate set.
Could be a couple things. One, I like overwrote the dogs with this line right here. And then I just got rid of them entirely like that. On the back end, it could be that in your seeds file, you weren't destroying dogs first. So every time you run the seed, it just makes more than one. And it could be that you didn't get rid of the dogs in your HTML. Those are my guesses.
So whenever you manipulate the seed, we have to Rails DB seed again? Like, for example, when you just did destroy all?
You don't have to. You only need to do it when you want to reset your database. Imagine a situation where I also add dogs. All right. Well, I want to get back to when I didn't add those dogs. I was just testing out to see whether or not I could add the dogs. The point of seeds is that you reseed and you end up with the database in a predictable state. Like, how else would you test deleting something? All right, I deleted a bunch of stuff out of the database. Fuck, it was the only copy I had of that stuff. So then you reseed and you end up right back where you started. Okay, this is like the 80-20 of the code challenge is this. Some things that we didn't do that are on the code challenge. There is a single one-to-many relationship. So just has many or belongs to or something like that. And then we include it in the response. So there's that. We didn't do anything with forms yet. Forms are nothing to be scared of, though. Forms are pretty easy. And then the one that freaks people out the most for some godforsaken reason is show pages. So we need to be able to link to a single dog's page, but that dog comes from the database. This is also not a complicated thing. It's like 4 lines of code. But for whatever reason, people get freaked out about it. So I'm telling you this in the hopes that you don't get freaked out about it the first time you see it. There's a very low likelihood that you will be all the way ready for this code challenge by the time that Wednesday rolls around. Cool. Well, in like regular Flatiron land, you wouldn't be getting it until Friday. So we're just seeing how some different puzzle pieces fit together. We get a couple more days working with this while we're still learning the last couple things. And man, a lot of things are going to start clicking for you once you see this whole workflow tomorrow with the mod 4s. And then also, we have until next Friday to like master all the material in this mod. Nothing to get your cockles up about. Anything else we should talk about before we wrap?
Just a quick question. With the one-to-many, would we do a separate fetch request for both of our models?
You can. I won't fail you for it.
Or you mean you would just put it in one?
Yeah, I would highly recommend doing it that way. Because otherwise you need to get all of them and then filter them down by the ones that match your thing. It's easier to do it with an include. Other questions? Going once, go twice. Awesome. Ahmed's sending out the survey right now. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you guys at stand down. Cheers.
Thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome.
Feel better, man.
Thank you.